Good evening, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing another video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and that is impulse control with special emphasis on responsibility around minors. So you may already kind of know what I'm talking about if you have been in a household with young people, especially people around the age of puberty. There seems to be a great deal of confusion and concern, I think, in general about the behavior and management of adult behavior around kids. And I want to start by mentioning that some countries don't historically or traditionally have a problem with this stuff. And the reasons why it's such a huge problem in the United States, and it is, child abuse and child sexual impropriety by adults is a pretty big problem here. The reason why this doesn't happen in other countries is not the subject of this video. I might go into that at some future point, but I want to talk specifically about this attitude that I'm seeing among people in general about how it's better to be safe than sorry as far as separating adults from children, as far as being around people just in general, and managing it, micromanaging it, and judging it, prejudging it, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So here's the thing. I have actually spent quite a bit of time. I've lived with young people. I was a young person myself, and I have a very clear memory of how it felt and what went on. And I was never, fortunately, sexually abused. I was never abused like that. I understand some people have a different history, and I'm not trying to trigger anybody or bring anything up, but I do know that adults have the option, every single adult has the option to control themselves, to choose to be respectful. And I think that the takeaway here, the big point that I'm trying to make, is that when you're loving anybody, right, the other person's situation, their circumstances, who they are, how old they are, makes very little difference, because you're not doing anything until it's proper. Whether it takes them a long time to get there, whether you're waiting until they turn 20 or whatever, that's possibly what you're going to have to do if you're being proper. There's something called abstinence. There's something called respect. There's something called recognizing and respecting boundaries, and just, not generally being a douchebag and a vampire. Here's your problem, right? Why are there so many douchebags and vampires in this country? That's my question. Why do we have so much infrastructure, rules and policies and regulations, and an atmosphere of fear and an assumption that people will get abused if you let them in this country? Why is that happening? Oh, wait a minute. There might be something here about paying bills. It all seems to circle back to our economic system. I think that when you make enemies out of neighbors and out of roommates even, not just businesses, but literally everybody who's forced to work at gunpoint, if they're not retired, disabled, or independently wealthy, right? They have to work in this country. You're expected to earn a living. So what that ends up doing is it creates a situation where you're going to die if you don't find some money, if you don't coin up. So it's assumed that everybody is a resource towards that end here in this place. And I don't mean to dive down that rabbit hole, but it creates an atmosphere that is entirely toxic and hostile between people. We call it, it's friendly competition, it's healthy competition. No. There's nothing healthy about working at gunpoint and being terrified that if you lose your job, you're gonna be destitute, that you might, be exposed to the elements, lose your home, because these things happen. So, the unwritten consequences of failing to pay your bills puts a lot of stress on people. It drives them to drink. And here's another vector, right? A vector towards child abuse. To get back on subject, when people are stressed out about money, when people are stressed out in general, and when they need an escape, they need to feel good because something isn't there that should be there on a daily basis, they turn to substances, don't they? They turn to drugs and alcohol. And what do we know? I've said this in other videos about substances that impair your judgment. It's legal to drink in this country since the beginning of last century, right? Since prohibition was repealed. It is now again legal to drink. We tried to make it illegal, but we couldn't succeed because we didn't have the technology or the wherewithal to enforce it, right? We literally voted alcohol out of this country. I'm just going to remind everybody real quick. This country voted. Democracy spoke against alcohol. It happened. We could not actually practically enforce the law. That's the problem. So we had to repeal it. Not because we wanted to, not because we didn't vote for it, but because we simply couldn't do it. So the reason we voted it out is because when people get drunk, when it's formally recognized as a legitimate freedom that you have to abandon your responsibility, which is what happens, we say, well, you shouldn't drink if you're in a situation where you might have to be responsible. It's just not realistic. It's not practical. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. People are going to get drunk and things pop up. You cannot be expected to foresee the unforeseeable. And if you live with kids and you're drinking, there you have it, right? There you have it. So we have this entire infrastructure. We've got court systems. We've got people in prison. We've got laws, coming out the wazoo just because we want the freedom to drink and abandon our responsibility and still hold people responsible for what they do, sort of, right? Okay, well, there you have it. That's the problem. Problem is that you can't hold people responsible when they're drinking. So we end up segregating children, expecting the worst, and finding the worst, right? So my feeling is I don't drink personally. I don't abuse children. I haven't been abused. I'm not afraid to be around children either. And it always shocks me when people are afraid to be around children, or if I get a reaction that people are surprised. They're like, that girl's underage. It's like, well, what do you think is about to happen, bro? I'm saying hi to a kid and you think that something inappropriate is happening? No, hold on a second. That's a red flag is what that is. If I'm shaking a child's hand, or if I'm saying hello to a child, or if I'm in a group where there are children, I don't feel uncomfortable because I'm not worried about my behavior. What are you saying again? What do you think is about to happen here? Now I'm worried about you. You understand? Don't give me stuff to worry about. Behave yourselves, control your impulses, and maybe put that bottle down. Put down the bottle so we can all get along just fine. That'd be great. Reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.